Hi everyone and welcome to another episode of this podcast. Today we're going to be talking about one particular word that was very appropriate for my recent holiday, and it applied in two specific ways, and so that's why we would like to talk about it. Obviously we'll be talking about Alistair's holiday a little bit as well, and he can tell us a little bit whether he had a good holiday or not, but it is that moment where everybody goes back to work, everybody sort of finishes their holiday and has to get back to the grindstone. So let's talk a little bit about holidays, Alistair, and well, you're here with me as usual, which is fantastic. How was your holiday? Okay?
Yeah, great holiday. Yeah, very nice, no problem. So I had a smashing holiday in the positive sense. We'll
good.
come to the negative sense with your holiday.
Yeah.
And back to the, what do they call it? The post-holiday blues or Blue Monday?
That's right.
The Monday you go back to the office. But I don't work in an office, so I don't have that sense exactly. My come back to work being a teacher is very, very gradual, little by little. So it's quite nice, actually. It's not that, back in the office Monday morning, 8 hours, it's the shock of the... so I don't particularly get this, the post-holiday blues.
Sort
a
of
little bit, but not
a smooth transition.
A very smooth transition. But from next week, September, we'll be back, more or less back to my full timetable. But I've had sort of 2 weeks to gradually get back into the, what would we say, back into the groove, or I don't know.
Yeah, back into the groove, Back to the grindstone as well.
Well, but back to the grindstone makes me think straight to the grindstone, like immediately back to the full-on work. No,
right?
Because the grindstone is obviously a stone that you're grinding, like I don't know, coffee or something.
Yeah,
so it's got that idea that you're being, machacado, which is a word we'll come to later. I think. So it makes it sounds to me like an immediate back to work, like oh my god, full on. And mine isn't that. So mine's a much more slow, gradual process. A few hours, because lots of my students are still on holiday at this time, at the end of August.
Sure.
So, for me is a very easy, relaxed, gradual back to work, which for your mental state is very good. It helps.
No, it is good. Absolutely. Absolutely.
For my bank account, not so good, but that's another story. We won't go there.
Yeah. Actually, I went to Winchester. I went to Winchester this summer, and we actually went to a place where they had like a river where they kind of have one of these mills, like we're talking about a grindstone. Essentially, they're they're like water mill, isn't it? It's a
mill in this case.
Water mill, and the water mill often powers a sort of some sort of grinding. Grindstone of some kind, right?
Yeah, it's a big heavy stone. Well, in the past, I don't know. Well, no, they still exist, as you say. Yeah, and they move around and it grinds the wheat or the corn or whatever it may be. Sometimes it's with horses. So instead of water, horses or donkeys moving this thing around. So you need some kind of power, whether it's water or wind. Obviously, a windmill is with wind.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I don't know how we've gone on to this from our holidays, but anyway, the topic of going back to the grindstone. So
going back to the grindstone, absolutely. Yeah,
here we are back to the podcast grindstone.
That's right. But it's true that it does have a sort of negative idea to it, or negative connotation. Going back to the grindstone, right?
Happy, nice. Oh, great! Back to the grindstone. I'm happy.
Yeah,
you wouldn't use it in that way. It's always back to the grindstone. Yeah, it's back to the routine, isn't it?
Yeah, with a sigh. Yeah,
with a
absolutely
sigh. Yeah, good word, sigh. Like that. Yeah, that's a sigh.
Yeah. Okay, yes. So let's. I'll talk a little bit about my holiday, because you mentioned smashing, right? And in English, we can use the word smashing to mean. You said that your holiday was smashing, and that's what we're going to focus on today in this episode. A little bit about the whole meaning of smashing. It's kind of interesting. Now, if
your
you
holiday was smashing in two senses.
It's true.
That's the difference. True. Mine only in the positive one. But there is a negative one, which you will tell us about.
I will explain that, yes. But overall, my holiday was pretty smashing. It was good. I enjoyed it a lot, and it was, and clearly that is what most people will think of when you say smashing. It is a very British term, and we'll come on to the differences between American English and British English. But if you say, had a smashing holiday, just as you said just now, then people would think that it's a good holiday. Nice. It's a good holiday,
had a good one.
Right?
So it's like saying wonderful, great, amazing, fantastic, all these positive adjectives that we use.
Absolutely. But mine was, unfortunately, smashing in two ways. Smashing in the fact that it was good, but also smashing in the fact that, well, actually I parked my car, I arrived in close to Barcelona, and parked my car, left it there for a few days, came back a few days later, and noticed that one of the windows, in fact the rear window, had been smashed, and one of our suitcases had been taken. So I was sort of shocked, and you never kind of believe these things when you see it. You kind of like,
happens to you.
You kind of like, yeah, you think, how can that happen? But in the end, yeah, you kind of say to yourself, well, you know, it is what it is.
That's right.
And so that's why my holiday was smashing in a good way, but also in a bad way. That's right.
Yeah, because to smash is to use some kind of, I don't know, heavy object, a brick. The person could have used a brick, a hammer, who knows what, a stone, to break something. So in this case, they smashed the window. So they used some kind of object to hit, to impact the window, to make the glass. There's another word here, shatter is a good word. So when the glass completely breaks into lots of small pieces, which I imagine it did. It did. Shatters. So somebody smashed the rear window. Rear means the back or the behind.
Detrás, no,
as opposed to the front. Yeah. So the rear window. I imagine because they could see something, or they thought there must be something in the car that they were trying to
presumably,
I suppose. Yeah. So was something stolen from the car?
Yes, a suitcase. Luckily, there wasn't much in the suitcase. There were just sheets and towels.
Oh, thank God.
So it was like pretty lucky that was the case. But yeah. They did take a suitcase. That was the only thing they took. But
they wouldn't have been very happy then for their efforts to find a few sheets and towels.
No, probably not what they were looking for.
No, they imagined something a bit more valuable in the suitcase, full of money or gold.
Something they could resell, presumably. I think that's what they're
tablets,
kind of looking.
A computer, a laptop.
That's what
they just got some old towels and sheets. So I suppose they could probably see that there was something there in the back of the car, and obviously they smashed the rear window to get access. So this person is a thief, so ladrón, a thief.
Yeah,
so this
ladrón.
person stole your suitcase. Luckily for you, there was nothing particularly valuable. Maybe the suitcase itself was the most
Yes,
valuable.
I mean, of course, all of these things, they add up in terms of price, of course.
Yeah.
And you kind of think, oh, well, it was only a few things, but in the end, they do add up in price.
Add it together.
We'll come on to the whole idea of insurance in a minute, which is super interesting as well.
Insurance vocabulary.
Interesting. Yeah.
So you had a smashing holiday in both senses, the positive sense and the less positive sense, or the negative sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, so of course, when you do that, when something like that happens to you, you call all the relevant people and you call your insurance, and most of the time, and this is very interesting, isn't it? Because you have to go and in Spain, at least, you have this idea and concept of a denuncia, right? Now that idea, and we actually did this. We went to the police station and we filed a report, right? We filed a report. Now that's the formal way of saying it, but you could just say we reported it to the police, right?
Yeah, you reported the incident or the break-in or the whatever it was, the theft, to the police. Yeah. So you have this word report, which everyone will know watching this as, or listening to this as un informe, but we can use it as a verb. So, you reported the incident, or you reported what happened to the police, or you filed a report. So you can also use it as a noun, to file, poner un denuncia, I suppose. You filed a report to the police, or you reported the incident, to the police. So you can use report there as a noun or a verb. So it's maybe a bit strange to Spanish speakers to use report in that way, but I suppose because when you report it to the police, they write a report. What happened.
Exactly.
So, I mean, that's probably where it comes from. No, that at the end of that, you tell them what happened. They write it down on paper, or this day is in the computer, and they have a report. And in this case, probably they would give you a copy of that report. Not in all cases.
They did, yes.
Because you would need that for the insurance to prove that it happened.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what we did. We went and filed a report, or we reported it to the police, got our denuncia, of course, as you would say in Spanish, and then we were able to then send that to the insurance to prove, right? To prove, which is another important verb, to prove what had happened, which is very,
they wouldn't accept.
Important.
Insurance companies are you've got to go to the police and get
You have to, absolutely.
If you don't do that, it's very complicated to get any kind of compensation from your insurance company for these kind of incidents.
Yeah, good. So that's what happened. And it kind of got me thinking in terms of like, oh yeah, smashing. It can be, you can have, so it started me thinking about, well, you can have a smashing holiday. It started me thinking about the good way of talking about it, like smashing as in great, but at the same time, obviously, smashing as in breaking something or rompiendo algo, right?
Yeah, you can smash plates. No, if you drop some plates on the floor, they probably smash. They break. Often this idea of breaking into pieces, not necessarily, but sort of gives you that image, doesn't it? Like plates breaking, smashing into various pieces, or the window glass tends to break in pieces. So it's sort of that sense. Often we use it. You know, a smashed window, smashed plates, things like that.
Yeah,
no?
Absolutely. Now, one of the interesting things about this is that we were talking about how often or how frequent this word is actually used in British English, because there is a bit of a difference between American and British English here, really. It's more of a British term, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say it's very British. I think maybe I've heard occasionally on an American movie someone using it, but not very often. So I don't. It's not very American. They'd understand you though. If you went to USA and said, "I had a smashing holiday," they'd understand what you mean. It wouldn't confuse them. I don't think.
Sure.
But not a word that they would. I think they would use. And we were talking about this before recording, that we think. Like, I'm not sure I've ever used this word in my life. Well, I might have done, but not very frequently in that sense of a nice thing or a good thing. So I probably wouldn't say I had a smashing holiday. I'd say I had a wonderful holiday. I had a great holiday. I tend to use other words. So I think this word is slightly old-fashioned now, maybe a bit out of date. Maybe something our grandparents would use. Or if you watch old movies in Britain from the 40s, 50s, 60s, people would go, oh, smashing. But I think it's a word that's become a little redundant. Young people, I think, now would not use this at all, this word.
That's right.
They'd understand it, so everyone would understand it, no problem. They wouldn't be confused by it, but I think it is a word that's, becoming a bit redundant, going out of fashion, maybe.
That's right.
Perhaps.
That's right. I think so. I think so too. But still important to know, and
it's worth knowing.
Definitely for your passive vocabulary. And then in terms of America, I think it's really interesting that you kind of say if you use it in America, probably people would understand, and I think they probably would. But two people got back to me when I sent my Friday email about this event, and they said the first thing that they came to their heads was the famous band, the Smashing Pumpkins, of course.
Yeah, Smashing Pumpkins. Yeah. And many people will know this group, even if they've not heard the music. The name is familiar to them. Yeah, I mean, I've not heard a lot of the Smashing Pumpkins, but I know the name immediately. It's a very famous.
Yeah, absolutely. Band. Yeah, they are famous.
Yeah, and we were saying when we first heard this band name, the Smashing Pumpkins, what was the first thing? Did we think wonderful pumpkins, like they're very nice in that sense, or the image of somebody literally smashing pumpkins with a hammer or a stick or something? And for me, the first image that comes into my mind when I first heard it, and now, is the idea of destroying or breaking, or somebody hitting pumpkins with a heavy object. It wouldn't occur to me to think wonderful pumpkins, but I don't know why. Because it's interpretable. Like, I've never heard the group explain the name, what it means. So it's totally open to, you can interpret it how you want.
Absolutely.
You could think, they're talking about wonderful, lovely pumpkins, which is a more positive idea. Or, I hate pumpkins, and smashing them with a stick. No idea which one it's supposed to mean. Maybe it's deliberately ambiguous.
I suppose so. I don't know. I mean, I suppose partly because it was an alternative band, right? Yeah, I think it was definitely alternative and sort of like
probably more violent. To you imagine.
More related to this sort of. It wasn't like heavy metal or anything like that, but it was punky, alternative. Yeah. And so because of that connotation, you would definitely think that it would be more related to the.
And maybe as Americans, and we've just said, we think Americans don't really use this word in the.
Also, yes.
So you would think they're Americans, bit punk rock, bit cool. You immediately would think of the more aggressive action or the negative.
That's right.
But we don't really know, so I've never heard them in an interview explain. No one said, so why the splashing cap? What does it mean? I've never heard it explained, so they just leave it. It's open to interpretation.
That's right.
But that's interesting, isn't it? There are two ways of... So I'm sure there must be some people who think all their life, all the time they've known about this band, in their mind is wonderful. These people love pumpkins. They're smashing. They really love them.
I reckon it must be some... I reckon it must be to do with Halloween. Probably maybe smashing pumpkins after Halloween.
When the Halloween's finished. What do you do with your pumpkins? Smash them, break them, destroy them, throw them away.
Probably.
Yeah, no doubt. So, but Americans love Halloween. It's a
they
national
do.
obsession.
They do.
So it's definitely got to be connected.
My guess is something to do with Halloween, and what to do with the pumpkins afterwards. But
probably that's where it comes from. But we'll never. Well, maybe if you go on YouTube, you can find someone explaining.
Maybe. In fact, this Rodolfo actually wrote into us, and he actually asked whether exactly this idea about whether he should use smashing in a sort of if he goes to America, and probably the answer would be no, don't use smashing necessarily unless you are really smashing and breaking something, right?
Yeah, I mean, as we said, I think they'd understand you, but it's quite as we're saying, it's becoming quite an unusual word even in the UK.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, then to use it, I think if you said that in America, they'd probably go, you're so British, or something like that. They probably might be they might quite like it. You'd sound very, very English, saying, that's smashing. Right. So they'd understand you, but I think it's probably a word, probably best to avoid.
That's right.
And there are many other words you can use that are more common. No? Say, great, wonderful, fantastic. There are so many positive adjectives to describe things. I'd say smashing is probably not that useful anymore, particularly and especially not in America, shall we say.
That's right. Absolutely. Now, there is another interesting meaning, and this is also a little bit British, isn't it, Alistair, in terms of smashed?
Totally. I think I'm trying. Sometimes it's not clear. Usually we know very clearly American vocabulary, British vocabulary, but sometimes you're not quite sure, and you're trying to think of films you've seen and like, have I heard them using that word? Maybe, but I don't think so. It's very British, which is was it Vanessa, I think, wrote an email?
Yes, Vanessa did come in. Yes, that's right. Yeah, Vanessa said, she said in her email, she said, I am smashed.
Yeah. And
now this is very interesting, right? Yeah.
I think we smiled a bit when we read this.
Yes.
Because what does it mean, Daniel, to be if you say you're smashed in the United Kingdom?
It basically means that you're drunk.
Yeah. Completely drunk. Very drunk.
So, for example, an example sentence would be, he came home completely smashed, right? That would be that would be how you would.
Last night I went out with my friends, I got completely smashed.
Yeah.
So you drank a lot. Yeah.
That's right.
So it's funny that she says, I'm smashed. Now, what she was trying to say, I think, is about being she's had health issues, she's very tired. So she was coming back to that verb machacar, which you could use smash in a physical sense of breaking something with machacar. Yeah. But in Spanish, you can say, in Spanish in Spain, we're never quite sure about that in America, estoy macharcado means I'm exhausted, I'm very tired.
Yeah.
Hecho polvo is another thing they say in Spain, made dust, which I always find, which is a similar thing. I mean, if you smash something enough, it probably would become dust. So, there's a connection there.
Yeah.
So we would say in England, where you just, I'm very tired, I'm exhausted, I'm dead, muerto, that they also say in Spanish. But if you say I'm smashed, unfortunately, for Vanessa, it means you're drunk. So I think you did sort of answer back and say,
absolutely,
be careful with that in the UK. Don't say you're smashed unless you are, but don't use it meaning you're very tired, because people will.
It's interesting because that in itself is interesting. But the other thing that's interesting is this whole idea of destrozado, right? Because it also can mean sort of like the idea of estoy destrozado, right? Yeah. So, and then the translation would be I'm destroyed. But again, in English, we can't use that sort of connotation or that sort of image to mean tired. We'd have to use exhausted or whatever. But
when you can't. Yeah, it's true. It's strange how words that maybe basically have the same meaning, but you just can't use them in one language or the other. You know what I mean? So if you say, so you could say I'm dead. So you can use metaphors. Obviously, you're not dead, just like you're not destroyed. Literally, are you? But
no.
But for some reason, in one language, it's okay to use that with that meaning. Another language, it doesn't work. So you say I'm destroyed. I mean, in theory, you could use that. Why not? But we don't. So we don't say I'm destroyed. People might guess what you mean, probably. Yeah. You could say, I think you mean you're very tired. No, you're exhausted.
Yeah. But even then, it's not very clear because, like, if you say you're destroyed, it could be either like that you're exhausted or emotionally. Yeah.
Actually, maybe we would use it for emotionally.
We would use it for emotions, yes.
Thinking about it. Yeah, so people think you're destroyed in an emotional sense.
Yes.
Your partner's just left you and you're, destroyed in that sense. in an emotional. Yeah, your heart is broken. I'm destroyed. Yeah, that's true, but not in the sense of very tired, as in from.
Yeah, but in many cases, Spanish speakers use it in the way of exhaustion, right?
Yeah,
so,
which we wouldn't.
So. Hoy estoy destrozado.
Frito. They use fried.
Frito, yeah,
estoy
of course,
frito, fried, which we wouldn't use. No, we
use.
So it's a richer vocabulary actually in Spanish with this. Being tired, you've got very hecho polvo, machacado, frito, a lot. And in English, well, there may be some bad words. Well, there are bad words we can use. We won't mention to say you're very tired, but we won't go there. So you can use sort of swear words, but using normal vocabulary, not bad language, it's fairly limited, really. No, it's I'm really tired. I'm exhausted. I'm dead. I can't think of many more. There probably are some slang words that we're forgetting here, but maybe not as rich as the Spanish in that sense.
Well, actually, you were actually talking about this other word before we started recording, which is knackered. I feel knackered.
Yeah, I forgot about it. Okay, but that's very British colloquial, so an American wouldn't understand, I don't think, if you said you're knackered.
Yes.
But it's a great word. It's one of my favourite words in English. I love it.
Yeah.
So to be knackered, okay, that I suppose is the equivalent of the machacado, destruido, frito. That would be our word, if you like.
Yeah.
Which comes from very quickly because it's so basically the knacker was a job. So when before cars, horses were working animals, obviously on the farms and in cities pulling heavy things. No, anyway, they worked a lot, and of course there came the point when they were old, they were totally exhausted and not fit for purpose. They couldn't work anymore because they were destroyed. So you took them to the knacker. Today would be your car, and your car gets into a state it doesn't work anymore. It's old. You take it to the scrap yard, no?
So
it's like a sort of scrap yard for horses or animals. So you take your horse to the knacker. The knacker would, sacrificar, as they say in Spanish, would kill the horse basically because it wasn't any use anymore. And obviously for the owner, it costs money to feed it. I mean, it's very cruel, really. It's like the horse has no value to me as a working animal. Costs me money to maintain it. So please. Kill it, and I don't need to maintain it. I'll get a new horse. So the knacker would kill the horse and use as many parts of the horse as possible to sell for different, like dog food, cat food, the hair of the horse for wigs, I think.
Right.
Well, whatever they could use the horse for to get some money, they would, and that's how they made a living. The knacker. So the horse is knackered, meaning it's destroyed, killed.
Yeah.
So if you say I'm knackered, that's what you're saying, really.
Yeah.
You're like an old, exhausted animal that's been sacrificed.
That is no longer useful or no longer fit for purpose. That's
exactly.
Right, yeah.
So it's sort of very similar to the destroyed, fried, hecho polvo. Well, actually, the nearest really is the hecho polvo, made dust. Because if you destroy the horse and take every part of it, it disappears. It's completely, it's gone. It's dust. So, I mean, that is perhaps the nearest equivalent. I really like that. So if you're in UK, don't use it in USA, Canada. But if you're in the USA, if you say to a British person, "Oh, I'm knackered," they'd love it because it's such a British word. They'd be like,
"Well, it is very British. It is very British.
Where did you learn that? How do you know that?"
I would be very impressed if a Spanish speaker said that.
You wouldn't expect a Spanish speaker to say knackered. So there you go.
That is very
impress your British friends or colleagues if you have any by using that word. And it's not a bad word. So it's
not really.
It's perfectly.
No. I would say it's more informal. Like it's not a business context.
I wouldn't use it in a meeting with your. It's not. It's a very informal word.
Yeah.
So use it in personal relations with friends or. But not
maybe in the pub and you're kind of telling your friends how you feel. I feel knackered.
In a presentation. In your work, don't use knackered.
No.
Not because it's rude, but it's a very informal word. But with your colleagues or friends in the bar having a beer after, say, "Oh, God, I've been working so hard this week. I'm knackered. I'm absolutely knackered." So it's just a really good way to say, "I'm exhausted. I'm really tired."
Yeah.
But not smashed, because then if you make the mistake and say, "I'm smashed," in the pub they go, "You're smashed already. You've only had 2 beers." So it's interesting, really. The words mean basically the same thing.
Yeah.
But one has one meaning and one has a different meaning.
That's right.
This is the complexities of language, especially when you get into slang and colloquial expressions.
That's
so easy to confuse them.
Yeah, you could be smashed and knackered, obviously.
You could be, You get to the end of the night after you've had 6 or 7 beers, and it's the end of the week. It's Friday night. You've been working, and you say, "I'm knackered and I'm totally smashed." So both things at the same time.
Yeah, and if you really understood that as Spanish speaker, you'd be like really great C1 level. That is like very impressive.
Yeah, I'd be very impressed. A, if you could use it, and B, if you could even understand what I'm talking about.
That's right,
about.
absolutely.
Like, oh wow, you must have lived in the UK, or
yeah, exactly.
Because just learning English sort of in Spain in academies and more at school, you're not going to learn these words.
No, you're not going to learn these.
That's a great thing when you go to live in a country or spend significant amount of time maybe living with a family. If you're living with a family, which many people do when they're younger, for a month, this are the kind of words you're going to hear.
Yeah, you are.
Oh, I'm knackered, and they'll be like, "Sorry, what does that mean?" And then have to explain it to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Well, let's get back to Smash, because we did actually have two people write into us about their things that they'd recently done that they thought were smashing, as in good, right? And Javi actually wrote into us, and he talked about a film that he recently watched, which was, I can't remember the actual
Alien
name.
Romulus.
Ah, right. Yes, Alien Romulus. That's
alien of many.
That's right.
The premiere, he says.
Yeah, a premiere. That was right. Yeah, and he thought that it was a smashing event. Yeah.
So he really enjoyed the film.
That's right. And Lourdes also wrote in, and she told us that she had recently got a smashing haircut, which took 8 years off her, which is like, we both were very impressed by that. We kind of both wanted the same sort of haircut,
which means, in case people don't realize, taking 8 years off your life, I suppose, makes you look 8 years younger.
Absolutely.
So well done, Lourdes. I don't, as I say, in our case, I think no haircut is going to make us. No. I think we need hair extension as opposed to cut.
That's right.
There's
that's right.
Left, so
that's right.
Make me look younger.
That's right. We kind of need the opposite, really.
We need the opposite. Might make us younger. Probably not. It's a possibility.
Even then, it would be a hard job to make us
look 8 years younger, especially.
Yeah.
Maybe 1 or 2.
But that was great to get those two people right.
Nice.
Yeah, and nice for Javi for thanks to Javi for writing in as well. So yeah, there you go. A little episode about smashing. I think it's kind of like one of these words. It's one of these sort of like a word adventure sometimes, right? Something happens to you, and you kind of think about these words, and then think about how. In one case it can be absolutely amazing, but then on the other hand, of course, it was also my window was smashed, so not quite so good. So it's kind of these words can sometimes take you on an adventure, and we wanted to kind of take you today on that adventure with us about what this word can mean in many ways, but then also have other meanings in other locations. In America, it can have maybe they don't even understand. In the UK, it can mean that you're drunk. So all sorts of different things.
From this one word.
Talking
about the American British, we have mentioned some differences in vocabulary or understanding of or uses of words. Actually, Vanessa in her email also mentioned she used 2 words. Now, she either knew these words already, or maybe she looked them up in the dictionary in Google. Now, if you look things up in Translator, in internet, they're always American because it's Microsoft or...
Sure.
So you're always, or nearly always, going to get the American words. So she obviously either knew these words or she looked them up in Google, probably.
Yeah.
And it gave her the American words, which she wouldn't know that. She'd just think, oh, that is the word. So she used the word, talking about the car, windshield.
Ah, yes, yes.
Now, the windshield is probably actually the front window. Rather than the back one, which we would probably just call a back window. But the front one, in American English, is windshield, which is the word she used, which is what Google will give you as the translation. In Britain, we say windscreen.
That's right.
We say pantalla de viento, and they say escudo de viento. Now, the idea is exactly the same. It's acting as a screen or a shield to protect you from the wind when you're driving. Obviously not the back one, because the wind comes through the front.
Yeah, towards you.
In fact,
absolutely.
I think you told me the police or whoever allowed you to drive the car with no back window, no?
That's right. Absolutely. Yes. In fact, that was a bit of the story that I didn't actually explain, because the window or the rear window is still not fixed. And so I had to actually travel home.
No.
Still not. Yeah.
So you drove all the way from Barcelona. It's a long way. It's about 700 kilometers.
That's right. We had a piece of plastic, like a sort of temporary fix, right? Yeah. But in quite incredibly, that it's even when we just had it smashed and no plastic there, it was unbelievably, possible, just like quite easily possible to drive and
with
not.
No back. window.
No back window at all. Yeah, no rear window.
Well,
that's right.
we talked about this before we started recording. And when you think about it, it sort of makes sense that really the danger is the windshield or the windscreen, because obviously, you've got the wind and a stone or an object could fly up and hit you in the face, so it's very dangerous. But I suppose not having any glass in the rear window, it's not really dangerous. So I suppose that's why the police.
That's why it's permitted. Yeah, that's why it's permitted
in Spain, at least. In UK, I have no idea if it's permitted or not. But interesting.
Yeah.
So that, and the other word she used, referring, because she said about she was worried if you'd had something robbed or stolen, which obviously we've said you did. And she said, because this is the easiest way, breaking the rear window, to access the trunk.
Yes, of course.
No, and I think in your case the thing was actually on the back seat, but it could have been in the trunk, as she says. And obviously by breaking the back window...
No, it was in the trunk.
It was in the trunk. I had this idea.
Yeah, it was on the back seat. No, it was in the trunk.
They moved the back seat to get into the trunk. Okay. So trunk is an American word for this thing. What's it called in Spanish? Maletero. To put your maletas, that makes sense. Yeah. Now in Britain we use a very strange word. We say the boot. So una bota. Now a boot is something if I went to USA and rented a car and I said I want a car with a big boot, they go, with a big boot? They just think of a boot literally that you put on your feet. So they'd say, what are you talking about? So I'd have to translate from British English into American English. So I wouldn't say that because I know I confuse them. I'd say I want a car with a big trunk, and they go, oh, okay. Now to me or to us as British, trunk has several meanings, but not that one. So trunk is an elephant's trunk. Yeah. So the nose of an elephant is a trunk. The trunk of the tree. Yes. Tronco, very similar in Spanish. Yeah. And a trunk, and this is where the Americans, where it does actually make sense.
It does make sense.
I hate admitting that American English makes more sense than British English, but
most of the time,
Well, most of the time I don't know, but
certainly in spelling, I think spelling is more logical spelling.
Yeah. So a trunk is a baúl in Spanish. So a very big. So it's not a suitcase, a very big container, often to keep clothes or.
That's right.
I don't know. Well, to keep things in. So it's a container, you put things in, it's big. So calling the back of the car where you put things like your suitcase is a trunk makes perfect sense. Calling it a boot makes no sense at all.
That's right.
Unless, in fact, in the past we put our boots in there. That's the only thing.
Well, that potentially, yeah. I think actually when my dad went to university, he took a trunk with him.
Yeah,
as in at that time.
In the past
they used to travel with trunks. That's right. Yeah, now of course they were of course, they're basically sort of a larger version of a suitcase.
Yeah,
right.
It's a very
was
big,
much more difficult. Yeah.
So if you're taking a lot of things, or I don't know, whatever, you'd have it. Well, especially with sea travel, I suppose in the past, not necessarily your father, but when people travel on ships for weeks to get somewhere, and you had to take a lot of clothes, a lot of things, and also had a lot of space on the ship, not like now. Obviously now trying to take a trunk on a flight where they limit to you by 80 centimeters by 70, you know what I mean? Now it's the minimum possible, or they charge you a fortune. But in the past people would take trunks on traveling on a ship, for example, where you need to take a lot of stuff because maybe you're going away for 6 months or a year or something. That was more sort of typical. Now trunks, I don't know, you don't really come across them, do you?
No, they're more decorative now. Like
sometimes they're decoration in a house.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, my parents still have one in their home. I don't know whether it was the one in
bedroom or somewhere else. They look nice.
They do.
But anyway, so that makes sense to call the back of the car a trunk, but to call it a boot, I have no idea why. It's really weird.
No, well,
But
language
anyway,
doesn't so much.
So if you're renting a car in the USA, or the opposite in Britain, you have to use you have to translate between the two languages.
That's right.
Otherwise you'll confuse people completely. So.
That's right. Good. Alistair, thank you very much. That was a smashing episode, I thought.
It was a smashing episode, but nothing got smashed, thankfully.
That's right. So thank you very much for your time, and I will hopefully see you again next week. All right?
See you soon. Ciao.
All right. See you then. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Okay.